Sarah Chen's hands shook as she poured another cup of coffee. The dark liquid sloshed over the rim and onto the counter. She stared at the spill for a moment, then wiped it away with her sleeve. There was no time to get a cloth. There was never enough time for anything anymore. The wall display showed the station time. 0600 hours. Sarah had been awake for 22 hours straight. This was her 14th day working triple shifts. The Crimson Flu had swept through the station 2 weeks ago, taking down almost every staff member at Bright Horizons nursery. Every species except humans, that is. Sarah walked down the corridor toward the nursery wing. Her reflection in the polished metal walls looked terrible. Dark circles hung under her eyes. Her brown hair stuck out in all directions. Her uniform had wrinkles that would not smooth out no matter how many times she pulled at the fabric. But she was still standing, still walking, still working. That was the thing about humans. They could keep going when others could not. Back on Earth, her parents had always said she was stubborn. Her younger siblings called her a workaholic. Maybe they were right. But right now, that stubbornness was the only thing keeping the nursery running. The door to the main play area slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, 15 young aliens played, ate, and learned. Each one needed attention. Each one needed care. And Sarah was the only adult healthy enough to give it to them. She checked her schedule on her wrist display. Learning circle time with the Velcrin cubs was next. 7 small bear-like aliens with 6 limbs and soft gray fur. They were her favorite group, though she would never admit it out loud. The cubs were smart and curious. They asked endless questions about everything. On a normal day, teaching them filled Sarah with joy. Today was not a normal day. Sarah gathered the holographic display units and carried them to the learning room. Her arms felt heavy like someone had filled them with sand. She set up the equipment slowly, double-checking everything. The lesson was about stars and planets. The cubs loved space topics. The 7 Velcrin cubs bounded into the room right on schedule. They moved on all 6 limbs when they were excited, which was most of the time. Their big round eyes shone with enthusiasm. They chirped and chattered to each other in their own language. "Good morning, little ones," Sarah said. Her voice came out quieter than usual. "Good morning, Teacher Sarah," they chorused back in Galactic Common. Their pronunciation was getting better every day. The cubs climbed onto their cushions around the low table. Sarah sat down in her chair and activated the holographic display. Tiny stars appeared in the air above the table, forming familiar constellations. "Today we will learn about stellar cartography," Sarah began. "That means making maps of the stars." The cubs leaned forward, their attention fixed on the glowing points of light. Sarah pointed to different star clusters and explained their names and locations. She showed them how ancient travelers used stars to find their way across space. But something was wrong. The cubs kept glancing at her instead of the stars. Their small faces showed concern. Sarah did not notice. She rubbed her eyes and continued talking. The words felt thick in her mouth, like trying to speak through honey. She explained orbital mechanics, but the explanation came out jumbled. She had to stop and start over twice. Misref, the eldest cub, tilted his head. His ears twitched forward in the way Velcrin did when they were worried. He touched the arm of the cub next to him and made a soft sound. The other cubs responded with quiet chirps. They were talking about her. Sarah knew enough Velcrin language to catch a few words. Tired, wrong, sick. "I am fine," Sarah said, forcing a smile. "Humans just run differently than other species. We can work longer without rest." This was true. Human biology allowed them to stay awake much longer than most aliens. The Velcrin needed to sleep every 6 hours. The Shardlings entered rest mode every 4 hours. Even the hardy Clixons slept twice a day. But there was a difference between can and should. Sarah knew this. She just could not afford to care right now. Let me tell you about binary star systems, she continued. She tried to make her voice sound enthusiastic. The cubs deserved a good teacher, not an exhausted one. The holographic display showed two stars orbiting each other. Sarah began to explain, but her words slowed down. The stars blurred in front of her eyes. She blinked hard, trying to clear her vision. The cubs moved closer. They pressed against the table, their large eyes fixed on Sarah's face. Pip, one of the smaller cubs, reached out with a furry paw and touched Sarah's hand. "Teacher okay?" Pip asked in broken galactic common. "Yes, sweetie," Sarah said. "Just tired, but I can keep going. We have 30 more minutes of lesson time." 30 minutes. She could manage 30 minutes. Then there would be snack time, then outdoor play, then quiet reading, then lunch preparation, then the afternoon schedule. Her mind ran through all the tasks ahead, dozens of them, hundreds of small things that needed doing. Her parents back on Earth needed the money she sent home. Her father's medical bills kept growing. Her mother could not work anymore. Her siblings were still in school. This job paid more than anything Sarah could get on Earth. She could not fail. She could not rest. She just had to make it through today, then tomorrow, then the next day. Eventually, the other staff would recover from the flu. Eventually, help would come. Sarah leaned forward to adjust the holographic display. Her arms felt so heavy. She folded them on the table just for a moment, just to rest them while she gathered her thoughts. Her head lowered to rest on her arms, just for a second, just to close her eyes for one brief second. The learning room was quiet except for the soft hum of the holographic display. The stars continued to orbit above the table, casting gentle light on one sleeping human and 7 very worried Velcrin cubs. Sarah's breathing slowed and deepened. Her body had finally overruled her determination. After 14 days of triple shifts, after running on willpower and coffee, after pushing far beyond what any being should endure, her biology took control. She was unconscious before she even realized she was falling asleep. The cubs stared at their teacher. Mizarif stood up on his hind legs, his front 4 paws hanging in uncertainty. Tala made a high-pitched distress sound. The others joined in, creating a chorus of worried chirps. Something was very wrong with Teacher Sarah, and the cubs did not know what to do. Mizarif approached Sarah slowly. His 6 paws made no sound on the soft floor. He stretched his neck forward and sniffed at her hair. She smelled the same as always. Soap and something sweet that the cubs had learned was called coffee. But something felt different. The Velcrin cubs had a special ability. They could sense emotions from other beings. It was not magic or technology. It was just the way their species worked. They felt happiness and sadness and fear from those around them like humans might feel heat from a fire. Right now, Mizarif felt something strange coming from Teacher Sarah. It was not pain. It was not sickness. It was something deep and heavy, like darkness pulling her down into itself. But mixed with the darkness was relief, peace, comfort. Mizarif turned to the other cubs. "She sleeps," he said in their language. "But adults do not sleep like this," Tala said. Her ears were flat against her head, a sign of confusion. "Adults sleep in their dens at rest time, not at tables, not during teaching." This was true. In Velcrin culture, adults were always alert around cubs. They took turns resting so that someone always watched over the young ones. Showing weakness or exhaustion to cubs was considered wrong. It broke the trust that cubs needed to feel safe. But Teacher Sarah was not Velcrin. She was human. And humans were strange. Pip, the smallest cub, climbed onto a chair to get a better look at Sarah's face. Her eyes were closed. Her breathing was slow and steady. One hand still rested on the table, fingers slightly curled. "Should we call the medical bay?" Pip asked. "Maybe she is broken." "Not broken," Mizarif said. He closed his own eyes and focused on the feelings coming from Sarah. After a moment, he understood. She is sleeping, deep sleeping, like we do at night, but much deeper. She needs this. But why? Asked another cub named Resh. Why does she sleep now? In teaching time? Marif thought about this. He remembered something teacher Sarah had told them weeks ago during a lesson about different species. She had explained that humans needed something called continuous sleep, not the short rests that most species took throughout the day. Humans needed many hours of sleep all at once, in one long period. How many hours does teacher Sarah work? Midaref asked the others. The cubs looked at each other. They started counting on their paws. She gives us breakfast, Tala said. And morning play, Pip added. And lessons, and lunch, and afternoon activities, and dinner and bedtime stories, Resh continued. And then she stays for night watch, Marif finished. I have seen her through the window. She does not go to her den. She stays here. The cubs fell silent. They were young, but they were not stupid. They understood that teacher Sarah had been with them almost all the time. When did she sleep? When did she rest? How long has she been doing this? Tala whispered. Since the other adults got sick, Marif said. 14 days. 14 days without sleep? Pip's eyes grew wide. But she will die. No, Marif said, though he was not entirely sure. Humans can survive without sleep longer than we can. But it hurts them. I can feel it. She has been hurting for a long time. The cubs gathered closer to the table. They stared at their sleeping teacher with new understanding. She had been taking care of them while hurting, while exhausted, while needing rest so badly that her body finally forced her to stop. We should wake her, Resh said. She has more work to do. The Shardling younglings come next for their lesson. No, Marif said firmly. His voice carried the authority of the eldest cub. She needs to sleep. Feel her. Feel how much she needs this. The other cubs closed their eyes and focused their empathic senses. They felt the waves of exhaustion rolling off Sarah's sleeping form. They felt the desperation in her dreams. The way her mind clutched at rest like a drowning person clutching at air. They felt something else too. Worry, fear, stress about things beyond the nursery. She has people who need her money, Tala said softly. She could sense these things in Sarah's emotional state. Family far away, sick family. She works hard for them. That is why she does not rest, Pip realized. She cannot. She must work to help them. The cubs looked at each other. A silent understanding passed between them. Their teacher had been protecting them, caring for them, teaching them while sacrificing her own health. She had given everything she had. Now it was their turn to protect her. We must guard her sleep, Marif said. It is pack law. When a pack member is vulnerable, others guard them. But she is not pack, Resh pointed out. She is human. Marif's ears stood up straight. She is pack to us. She feeds us. She teaches us. She comforts us when we are scared. She is pack. The other cubs nodded. In their hearts, they felt this was true. Teacher Sarah had become pack to them. What do we do? Tala asked. Marif thought carefully. He had watched his parents guard his smaller siblings during sleep time back home on Velkrin Prime. He knew what pack did. First, we make the room safe for sleeping, he said. Pip and Resh, turn off the teaching display. Tala, make the lights lower. I will guard the door. The cubs scattered to their tasks. Pip stretched up and managed to tap the control panel. The holographic stars disappeared. Resh found the light controls and dimmed them until the room glowed softly. Tala grabbed a blanket from the nap corner and carefully draped it over Sarah's shoulders. Marif positioned himself in front of the door. He sat on his haunches, all 6 limbs ready. His ears swiveled forward, listening for anyone approaching. What if other teachers come? Pip asked. We tell them teacher Sarah is resting, Miss Riff said. We do not let anyone wake her. What if the cubs from other groups come for their lessons? Resh worried. We turn them away, Mirif said firmly. Learning can wait. Sleep cannot wait. Not for Teacher Sarah. Not anymore. The cubs settled into positions around the room. Some stayed near Sarah, close enough to feel her breathing. Others joined Mirif at the door. They were small. They were young. But they were determined. Sarah slept on, unaware of the 7 small guardians who had decided to protect her. Her breathing remained deep and steady. For the first time in 2 weeks, her face looked peaceful. Outside the learning room, the nursery continued its normal routine. The Shardling younglings finished their playtime and began moving toward the learning room for their scheduled lesson with Teacher Sarah. They did not know that 7 Velcrin cubs had just declared the room off-limits. They did not know that those same cubs had decided that protecting one tired human was more important than any schedule or any rule. The cubs waited, their ears perked up, their empathic senses stayed alert. And when they heard the sound of approaching footsteps in the corridor, they prepared themselves. No one was going to disturb Teacher Sarah's sleep. Not if the cubs had anything to say about it. The Shardling younglings reached the door first. There were 4 of them, their crystalline bodies catching the corridor light and throwing rainbow patterns on the walls. They moved with small clicking sounds, their geometric forms shifting slightly with each step. The door to the learning room was closed. This was unusual. Teacher Sarah always kept it open during transition times. The Shardlings pressed their sensory nodes against the door panel, trying to activate it. Nothing happened. Inside the room, Mirif had locked the door using the simple controls meant for emergency situations. He and Pip stood on their hind legs, their front paws pressed against the door. They could hear the clicking sounds outside. "They want to come in," Pip whispered. "They cannot," Mirif said. "Not yet. Teacher Sarah needs more sleep." Tala moved to the communication panel on the wall. She had watched Teacher Sarah use it many times. She stood up and pressed buttons with her paw until she found the one that connected to the corridor speaker. "Learning room closed," Tala said in careful Galactic common. "No lesson today." Outside, the Shardlings tilted in confusion. The voice coming from the speaker was small and high-pitched. It was not Teacher Sarah's voice. "Who speaks?" one of the Shardlings asked through the door. "Velcrin cubs speak," Tala said. "Teacher Sarah sleeping. Cannot disturb. Go to play area." "But we have scheduled learning time," another Shardling said. Their species were very strict about schedules. Changes upset them. "Schedule changed," Mirif said, pressing closer to the door. His voice came out as a growl. He was trying to sound fierce, but he was only 3 years old. It did not work very well. "Teacher needs rest. Come back later, much later." The Shardlings hummed to each other in their crystalline language. This was wrong. This was not how the station worked, but the small voice from inside the room sounded very determined. "We will inform the director," one of the Shardlings said finally. "You inform anyone you want," Mirif said. "Door stays closed." The Shardlings moved away, their clicking sounds fading down the corridor. The cubs inside the learning room relaxed slightly. "They will tell the adults," Resh said nervously. "The adults will come and open the door." "Then we explain," Miruf said. "We tell them Teacher Sarah needs to sleep. They will understand." But Miruf was not entirely sure about this. Adult aliens often did not understand things the way cubs did. Adults had rules and schedules and responsibilities. Would they understand that sometimes rules needed to break for something more important? Sarah slept through all of this. Her head remained on the table, her breathing steady. The blanket around her shoulders rose and fell gently. In her dreams, she was walking through a garden on Earth with her mother. The sun was warm. There were no schedules, no responsibilities, just peace. 10 minutes passed, then 15, The cubs stayed at their posts, watching over their teacher. They took turns checking on her, making sure she still breathed normally, making sure she was comfortable. Then Pip's ears perked up. Someone is coming, many someones. The cubs heard voices and footsteps in the corridor, adult voices, speaking quickly. The cubs moved closer together, their empathic sense reaching out to identify who approached. Tala felt it first. The director is coming. Director Quallarath was a Clixon, a species that looked like enormous praying mantises. They were tall and thin, with large compound eyes. Quallarath was fair, but strict. The cubs did not know if the director would understand. The door panel beeped. Someone was trying to override the lock from outside. The cubs looked at each other, then at their sleeping teacher. "We do not move," Marif said. "We protect." The door slid open. Director Quallarath stood in the entrance, their tall form blocking the light from the corridor. Behind them were two other teachers who had recently recovered from the crimson flu. They all stared at the scene inside the learning room. 7 small Velcrin cubs positioned around the room like guards, dimmed lights, a sleeping human at the table, covered with a blanket, the holographic teaching equipment shut down. "What is the meaning of this?" Director Quallarath's voice buzzed with the harmonic undertones of the Clixon language. "Why is Teacher Sarah sleeping during work hours? Why are you cubs not in your scheduled activities?" Marif stepped forward. He was shaking, but he kept his voice steady. "Teacher Sarah needs sleep. She works too much. No rest for 14 days. Her body forced her to sleep. We are protecting her sleep." The director's large eyes focused on Mr. Riff. "You locked the door? You canceled scheduled lessons?" "Yes," Mirarif said. "Sleep is more important than lessons today." One of the other teachers, a Quellan with green amphibious skin, moved towards Sarah. "We should wake her and send her to her quarters. She cannot sleep here." "No," Pip said, jumping between the teacher and Sarah. "If you move her, she might wake up. She needs to sleep here, safe, protected." "This is highly irregular," Director Quallarath said. But their voice had changed slightly. The director moved closer, studying Sarah's face. They saw the dark circles under her eyes. They saw how deeply she slept. They saw the exhaustion written in every line of her body. "How long has she been asleep?" the director asked. 47 minutes, Tala said. Cubs were good at tracking time. 47 minutes, the director repeated slowly. "And she has not stirred at all? Not even when we spoke loudly just now?" "She sleeps very deep," Mirarif explained, "because she needs it very much. We can feel it. She was hurting for a long time, hurting from no sleep." Director Quallarath was quiet for a long moment. Their antennae twitched as they thought. Finally, they turned to the other teachers. "How many hours has Teacher Sarah worked in the past 14 days?" The teachers checked their data pads. One of them made a soft, gasping sound. "According to the logs, she has worked 312 hours in 14 days. That is over 22 hours per day with minimal breaks." "And how much sleep has she had?" the director asked, though they already knew the answer. "The logs show she took only short rest periods, never more than 2 hours at a time, often less." Director Quallarath's entire body went still. In Clixon culture, this was a sign of deep shock. The director looked down at the cubs, then back at Sarah's sleeping form. "I did not know," the director said softly. "The human biology report said humans could function on less sleep than most species. I thought she was managing well." "She was not managing," Mirarif said. "She was breaking, slowly. We felt it every day, getting worse and worse. Today her body said no more." The director bent down, bringing their face level with Mirarif's. "You did the right thing, young one. All of you did. You protected your teacher when we failed to see she needed protection." Mirarif's ears perked up. "We can keep guarding her?" Director Quallarath straightened up and turned to the other teachers. Clear Teacher Sarah's schedule for the rest of the day. Cancel all activities in this wing. Set the corridor to quiet mode. No loud sounds, no disturbances. Sir, one of the teachers said in confusion. You heard me, the director said firmly. Teacher Sarah will sleep as long as her body needs. These cubs have shown us something important. We will not interfere. Instead, we will help. The director looked down at the 7 cubs. You may continue guarding her. I will send cushions and proper blankets. And I will inform all staff that this room is now a rest zone. No one will disturb it. The cubs chirped happily. They had won. Their teacher was safe. Director Qualrath left with the other teachers, already speaking into their communication devices. The cubs heard words like policy review and human care requirements and emergency protocols. But those were adult words. The cubs did not worry about them. They returned to their guard positions, settling in for a long watch. Sarah slept on, unaware that her 7 small students had just changed everything. Word traveled fast through the nursery. The younglings of different species communicated in ways adults often did not notice. A chirp here, a gesture there, a shared image through a communication tablet. Within an hour, every young being in Bright Horizons knew that Teacher Sarah was sleeping, and the Velcrin cubs were guarding her. The Shardling younglings who had been turned away from the learning room were the first to help. They gathered in small groups, their crystalline bodies humming softly to each other. Then they positioned themselves in the corridor outside the learning room. They dimmed their natural bioluminescence, creating a soft, gentle light instead of their usual bright glow. What are you doing? Asked one of the recovered teachers, a trill named Uva. Making good sleep light, one of the Shardlings explained. Bright light is bad for sleeping. Soft light is good. We help Teacher Sarah. Uva did not know what to say to this. The Shardlings were usually difficult younglings, very focused on rules and schedules, but now they were voluntarily staying quiet and dim, creating a peaceful environment, all for one sleeping human. In the water tank room, the Quellan tadpoles heard about Teacher Sarah, too. They discussed it in their bubbling language, swimming in circles around their teacher. Can we visit? One tadpole asked. The Velcrin cubs said no visitors, their teacher explained. The tadpoles thought about this. Then they began to hum. It started with one tadpole, then another, then all 12 of them together. They created a sound that traveled through the water and into the walls of the station. It was their sleeping song, the one their parents sang to them at rest time. The humming reached the learning room where Sarah slept. It was quiet and low, more of a vibration than a sound. The Velcrin cubs felt it in their bones, and it made them feel calm. The Quellans are helping, Tala said with wonder. More younglings joined the effort. The Fryn kittens, small furry creatures with 8 legs, gathered blankets and pillows from their rest area. They dragged them down the corridor and left them outside the learning room door, then scurried away silently. A Draylight youngling, who could change colors like a chameleon, stationed itself at the corridor intersection. Whenever an adult approached who might make noise, the Draylight turned bright red as a warning. The other younglings would then signal for quiet. Inside the learning room, the Velcrin cubs took turns resting while others kept watch. They made a schedule without even discussing it. They simply knew, through their empathic connection, when another cub needed to sleep and when they should take over guard duty. Director Qualrath watched all of this from the security office. The monitors showed the coordinated effort of dozens of younglings, all working together to protect one sleeping human. The director had never seen anything like it. "This is remarkable," said Aura, the station AI. Her voice came from the speakers in the office. The younglings have created an interspecies alliance based on shared empathy for Teacher Sarah. They are teaching us something, Director Qualrath said quietly. We have been so focused on schedules and efficiency that we forgot to notice someone suffering. Teacher Sarah's biological data shows severe sleep deprivation, Aura reported. Her cortisol levels were dangerously high. Her cognitive function had decreased by 40%. She was experiencing the human equivalent of multiple system stress. But she never complained, the director said. She never asked for help. Humans often do not ask for help when they need it most, Aura said. They have a cultural tendency toward self-sacrifice, especially when protecting or providing for others. On the monitors, Director Qualrath watched as a group of Nexan younglings arrived at the corridor outside the learning room. The Nexans were insect-like beings, usually very active and loud, but they had heard about Teacher Sarah, too. The Nexans began building something with their natural silk. They worked quickly, spinning threads from their mandibles and attaching them to the corridor walls. Within minutes, they had created a soft, translucent curtain that blocked the view into the learning room while still allowing air to flow. Privacy screen, one of the Nexans explained to a passing teacher. So Teacher Sarah can sleep without being stared at. Everyone needs privacy to rest properly. More younglings arrived with offerings. Some brought their favorite comfort items. A Velcrin cub from another group left her most treasured stuffed toy outside the door. A Shardling placed a small crystal that made peaceful sounds. The gifts piled up, creating a shrine of sorts to the sleeping teacher. Inside the learning room, Sarah shifted slightly in her sleep. The cubs froze, watching her carefully, but she only adjusted her head on her arms and continued sleeping. Her face looked less tired now. Some of the tension had left her shoulders. She is healing, Mirarif observed. Sleep is healing her. Time passed. The station's schedule continued around the protected learning room. Other teachers took over Sarah's duties, splitting them among 3 adults. They quickly realized what should have been obvious. No single being could do the work Sarah had been doing alone. Director Qualrath called an emergency meeting of all available staff in the main conference room. The recovered teachers gathered, looking concerned. "We have failed Teacher Sarah," the director began without preamble. "We have allowed her to work herself into a state of physical collapse. The younglings saw what we did not. They took action while we remained blind." One of the Trill teachers spoke up. "But, Director, Teacher Sarah never said she was struggling. She always said she was fine when we asked." "Did we ask often enough?" the director challenged. "Did we truly observe her condition? Or did we simply accept her sacrifice because it was convenient for us?" The room fell silent. The teachers looked at each other with guilt on their faces. "I have been reviewing human medical literature," Aura's voice came through the room speakers. "Humans require 7 to 9 hours of continuous sleep per 24-hour period. Teacher Sarah has been receiving less than 2 hours per day for 2 weeks. By human standards, this constitutes severe torture." "Torture," one teacher repeated, horrified. "We did not know," another said weakly. "We should have known," Director Qualrath said firmly. "It is our responsibility to understand the needs of all species in our care. We have been treating Teacher Sarah as if she were Clixon or Trill or Velcrin. But she is human. Her needs are different." The director pulled up Sarah's work logs on the main screen. The hours stretched endlessly. 312 hours in 14 days. The numbers were clear. The failure was obvious. "Effective immediately, we are implementing new protocols," Director Qualrath announced. "Human staff will have mandatory rest periods, no more than 10 hours of work per day, minimum 8 hours of sleep per night, regular health monitoring, and we will hire additional staff to ensure no one is ever in this position again." "What about Teacher Sarah's financial needs?" asked Uva. "I understand she sends most of her salary to her family. If she works fewer hours, she will earn less." Director Qualrath's antennae twitched. "We will adjust her salary to compensate. This is not negotiable. We will not force any staff to choose between their health and their family's welfare." The teachers murmured in agreement. Some looked relieved. Others looked ashamed that it had taken a crisis to reach this point. Back in the learning room, 3 hours had passed since Sarah first fell asleep. The cubs continued their watch. Outside, the corridor had transformed into a quiet zone. Younglings of 6 different species sat together peacefully, all united in protecting their teacher's rest. Sarah slept on, surrounded by more love and care than she had known in years. And for the first time in 2 weeks, her dreams were not filled with worry and exhaustion. They were filled with warmth and safety and the soft chirping of cubs who had decided she was worth protecting. Sarah's eyes opened slowly. For a moment, she did not know where she was. Her mind felt foggy, like waking up from a very deep sleep. She blinked several times, trying to focus. The learning room. She was still in the learning room. But the lights were dim and soft. A blanket covered her shoulders. And there was warmth all around her. Sarah looked down and gasped quietly. The 7 Velcrin cubs were curled up around her chair. Mirif leaned against her leg. Tala's head rested on her foot. Pip was curled into a small ball under the table. The others were arranged in a protective circle, all sleeping peacefully. What had happened? Sarah's last clear memory was starting the lesson about stars. She had been so tired. She had put her head down for just a second, just 1 second. Sarah checked her wrist display. 4 hours. She had been asleep for 4 hours. Panic hit her. 4 hours of missed work. The schedule would be ruined. The other younglings would have missed their lessons. Director Qualrath would be furious. Sarah tried to stand up, but moving her leg woke Mirif. The cub's eyes opened immediately. He chirped softly and stood up on all 6 legs, stretching. "Teacher Sarah is awake," Mirif said in Galactic Common. His voice was full of relief and happiness. The other cubs stirred. One by one, they woke up and looked at Sarah with their big round eyes. They did not seem upset or worried. They seemed happy. "I am so sorry," Sarah said quickly. Her words tumbled out fast. "I did not mean to fall asleep. I must have been more tired than I thought. I have missed so much work. I need to go check on the other groups. I need to prepare dinner. I need to—" "No," Mirif said firmly. He placed a paw on her hand. "You need to rest more." "But the schedule," Sarah said. "The other younglings need—" "The other teachers are working," Tala explained. "Director Qualrath changed everything. You are not to work any more today. You are to rest." Sarah stared at the cubs. "The director knows I fell asleep? During work time?" "Everyone knows," Pip said cheerfully. "We told them. We said you needed to sleep. So we protected your sleep." "You protected my sleep?" Sarah repeated. She did not understand. Mirif gestured toward the door. "Come see." Sarah stood up slowly. Her body felt strange. She was not used to feeling rested. It was like being in a new body that worked properly. The cubs led her to the door. When it opened, Sarah stopped and stared. The corridor outside was filled with gifts. Stuffed toys, blankets, crystals, drawings, and dozens of other items were carefully arranged on the floor. The soft silk curtain still hung across part of the corridor, creating a peaceful atmosphere. The lighting was dim and gentle. And younglings from different species sat together quietly. When they saw Sarah, they did not run or shout. They simply looked at her with caring expressions. "What is all this?" Sarah whispered. "They all helped," Mirif said proudly. "Everyone wanted to protect your sleep. The Shardlings made soft light. The Quellans sang peaceful songs. The Nexans built the privacy screen. Everyone brought gifts." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She covered her mouth with her hand, trying not to cry. These children, these alien children, had done all of this for her. Director Qualrath appeared at the end of the corridor. The tall Clixon approached slowly, their movements gentle and respectful. "Teacher Sarah," the director said, "I am pleased to see you awake. How are you feeling?" "I am so sorry, Director," Sarah began. "I should not have—" "Stop," the director said, not unkindly. You have nothing to apologize for. I am the one who should apologize. I failed to recognize your suffering. I allowed you to work beyond any reasonable limit. The cubs had to show me what I should have seen myself. Sarah looked confused. But I chose to work those hours. I needed the money. My family. I know about your family, Director Qualrath said. And I understand. But there are better solutions than destroying your health. Please come to my office. We need to talk about many things. Sarah followed the director, the Velcrin cubs trailing behind them like a protective escort. Younglings from other species watched them pass, some waving softly, others making quiet sounds of support. In the director's office, Sarah sat down while the cubs arranged themselves around her chair. They did not leave her side. I have reviewed all your work logs, Director Qualrath began. What you have accomplished in 2 weeks is remarkable. But it is also impossible to sustain. No being should work as you have worked. But someone had to do it, Sarah said. Everyone else was sick. The younglings needed care. Yes, the director agreed. But we should have found another way. We should have called in temporary staff from other stations. We should have reduced our services temporarily. We should have done many things rather than allow you to sacrifice yourself. The director pulled up documents on the office display. I am implementing new policies. All human staff will have mandatory rest periods, no more than 10 hours of work per day. Minimum 8 hours of sleep. These are not suggestions. They are requirements. But my salary, Sarah said weakly. I send most of it home. If I work fewer hours, your salary will increase, Director Qualrath said. We are adjusting the pay rate to reflect the true value of your work. You will earn the same amount for fewer hours, and we are creating an emergency family support fund for all staff. When situations like yours arise, we will help directly. Sarah could not speak. The tears that had been threatening finally spilled over. She put her face in her hands and cried. Not sad tears, relief tears, grateful tears, exhausted tears that needed to come out. The cubs made soft, worried sounds. Mirif climbed onto her lap and pressed his furry head against her chest. Teacher Sarah is leaking, Pip whispered. She is crying, Tala explained. Humans cry when they feel strong emotions, not always sad, sometimes happy. Director Qualrath waited patiently until Sarah could breathe normally again. There is more, the director said gently. The Galactic Nursery Association has heard about what happened here. News of the younglings protecting your sleep has spread across many stations. You have become quite famous. Sarah looked up in surprise. Famous? The story is being called The Nap Zone Incident, the director explained. It has made many administrators realize they have been treating human staff poorly. Other stations are reviewing their policies. Some have already made changes. Because I fell asleep? Sarah said in disbelief. Because you cared so much that you worked yourself to collapse, the director corrected. And because these cubs loved you enough to protect you when you could not protect yourself. That story has touched many hearts across the galaxy. Mirif puffed his chest proudly. We are famous, too. Very famous, Director Qualrath said with amusement. The Velcrin High Council has sent a message. They wish to honor all 7 of you for your actions. The cubs chirped excitedly to each other. Sarah hugged Mirif close. Thank you, she whispered to the cubs. Thank you for taking care of me. You are Pack, Mirif said simply. Pack takes care of Pack. 2 weeks later, Sarah returned to the learning room for her first regular shift. She had slept properly every night. She had eaten good meals. She had sent messages to her family explaining the new situation. Her father's medical bills would be covered. Her siblings' school fees would be paid. Everything was going to be okay. The 7 Velcrin cubs waited eagerly at the learning table. When Sarah entered, They bounced with excitement but did not swarm her. They had learned to be more careful with their teacher. Sarah sat down in her chair. Immediately, Miss Arif placed a small cushion next to her. "Just in case," he said seriously. "In case you need to rest." Sarah laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. "Thank you, Marif, but I promise I will rest properly from now on. You taught me that it is okay to need help. You taught me that I do not have to do everything alone." "We learned something too," Tala said. "We learned that being strong means knowing when to rest, and that protecting someone you care about is the most important job." Sarah activated the holographic display. Stars appeared above the table again, just like they had 2 weeks ago. But everything was different now. "All right, my little ones," Sarah said warmly. "Today we will learn about binary star systems, and if anyone gets tired, we will take a break. All of us, together." The cubs settled in happily, their eyes bright with attention. Outside, the station continued its daily routine. But things had changed. The schedules were gentler, the expectations were kinder, and everyone knew that sometimes the most important thing was not working harder. Sometimes the most important thing was simply letting yourself rest. Sarah arrived at the nursery ward with a stack of colored paper tucked under her arm. She had spent half the morning at the supply depot trying to explain to the confused Cathara quartermaster why she needed decorative fiber sheets in multiple colors. "But what is their function?" he had asked, holding up a bright yellow sheet as if it might explode. "Educational purposes," Sarah had replied, which was technically true. Now she stood outside the nursery taking a deep breath. Through the transparent door panel, she could see the 15 cubs sitting in their usual perfect rows. Instructor Dawnbringer stood at the front, her golden eyes watching Sarah with curiosity. Sarah entered. Every pair of young eyes turned to her. "Cubs, this is Dr. Chen," Dawnbringer announced. "She will be conducting a human cognitive exercise with you for the next hour. You will show her proper respect and attention." "Yes." "Instructor?" 15 voices answered in unison. Dawnbringer moved to the back of the room and sat down, her tablet ready to take notes. Sarah walked to the front, setting her stack of paper on the desk. "Hello," Sarah said, smiling. "Today I'm going to show you something from Earth, but I'm not going to explain it first. I'm just going to do it, and you watch." The cubs exchanged glances. This was unusual. Their lessons always started with explanations, objectives, and expected outcomes. Sarah picked up a sheet of blue paper. She held it up so everyone could see it clearly. Then, without a word, she began to fold. The room was silent, except for the soft sound of paper creasing. The cubs watched, their large eyes tracking every movement of her hands. Fold, crease, turn, fold again. The flat sheet began to change shape, becoming something with edges and angles. In less than a minute, Sarah held up a completed paper airplane. She showed it to the cubs, turning it so they could see it from all angles. Then she drew her arm back and threw it. The paper airplane soared across the nursery in a smooth, graceful arc. It caught an air current and glided for several seconds before landing gently near the back wall. For 5